Pursuant to Internal Revenue Service guidance, be advised that any federal tax advice contained in this program is not intended to be used, and it cannot be used by any person or entity for the purpose of avoiding any tax penalties that may be imposed by the Internal Revenue Service or any other U.S. federal taxing authority or agency, or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any transaction or matter addressed in this show. The opinions expressed by the host and the guests are their own and may not be used as authoritative advice. Any use of this material without the written consent of the host is strictly prohibited.
Welcome back. I am your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is AM 560, The Answer, and this is the IRS Radio Hour. So to this segment, we're going to talk about my blog. And this week on the blog.
And what is on the blog this week?
This week on the blog, I wrote about installment agreements. So I think at one of the first shows, we talked about the 6 things you can do if you owe the IRS money.
After run, what is the second one?
They will catch you, so that doesn't work. Although that's the 6th thing is you can do nothing, and they can come after you.
They go to prison.
So the first thing you can do is you can write them a check, and you can pay them. And if you can borrow money from someone else, you should. Pay the IRS. Don't owe the IRS. Owe somebody else, but don't owe the IRS. The second thing you can do is you can come up with an installment agreement.
Unless you got to go to your local juice dealer.
That might be better, though, Jim.
No, I'd rather go to the IRS.
I guess they won't break your legs.
That's true.
Okay, they'll hurt you hard, but they won't break your legs.
Right.
At least I have never heard. I've never heard that before.
As Captain Winters once said, "Pain builds character."
That's absolutely true. And the second thing you can do is you can come up with an installment agreement. And there's a couple of different types of installment agreements that we're going to talk about. I just want to review the other things you can do. The third thing you can do is you can be declared currently not collectible. Actually, the third thing you can do is you can do what they call an offer and compromise, and that's when the IRS agrees to a lump sum payment instead of what you owe them. So, and it's not really based on what you owe, but it's based on how much you can pay. And the fourth thing you can do is the currently not collectible, and that means, hey, IRS, I don't have any money at this time, so stop collecting, and maybe in a year or two I can pay you, and they'll leave you alone for a year or two, maybe more. The fifth thing you can do is you can file for protection under the bankruptcy laws. Taxes in bankruptcy are very complicated, so you need a specialized, I shouldn't say specialized, because in Illinois you can't be a specialized attorney, but you need someone who's done this before, and it's important. And then the sixth thing, as I mentioned, is you can do nothing, and you can let the IRS have their way with you, and they will come after you and take your assets and hound you for the rest of your life.
Is this on? Have their way with you. I'm sorry.
Okay, so there's several different types of installment agreements. One's called a guaranteed installment agreement. One's a streamlined installment agreement. One's a partial pay installment agreement, and one's called a full pay installment agreement.
How would a full pay installment? That seems
that means I'm paying him in full, but I can't pay him right now. I'm going to pay him in installments. And the first one though I want to talk about is the guaranteed installment agreement, and this is for people who have tax that's less than $10,000. And as long as I've always paid my taxes on time for the last 5 years and I haven't had another installment agreement, and I can pay them in 3 years, it's guaranteed. The IRS will say, fine, we'll set up a time. If I owe $9,999, right, it'd be $333 a month or whatever that is, or it would actually be $333 a month, and that would pay off my debt, and the IRS would agree to that. They don't have to go to their supervisor. They could say, done deal. And it's guaranteed. The second type is what we call a streamline, and a streamlined it now is up to $50,000. So if I owe the IRS up to $50,000, there's a streamline process, and this has just changed last year. End of 2012, the IRS came up with a new program. The program, they call it the Fresh Start Program. And the Fresh Start Program changed the streamline from $25,000 to $50,000. And they changed how long they'll agree to take payments from 60 months to 72 months. So it makes them a lot more viable for people who owe the IRS money. It's not unusual for people to owe more than $25,000. And it is not unusual for people to owe more than $50,000. But if you owe less than $50,000, then the IRS has this streamlined process. And the great part about the streamlined process is they don't ask you for any information. So you don't have to give them your bank statements. You don't have to give them your pay stubs. They don't go through all your assets, and they don't really investigate you. What they say is, okay, this is how much you owe. We'll come up with a 72-month plan, and you pay us in 72 months. And that's a very, again, it's a good program. It encompasses a lot of people who owe the IRS money, and it makes it very much more easy and less expensive because I don't have to do the big investigation. The third type is called a partial pay, and this is a type that a lot of people get into, the partial pay, because it's what it is I can't pay the IRS everything I owe them over 72 months. The number is just too large, and so all I can pay them is what I can, how much money I have, and so but this gets to be very complicated in that the IRS is going to do a full financial investigation of you. So they're going to ask you for your pay stubs. They're going to ask you for all of your bank statements, substantiation on what you pay for all of your expenses. So there's lots of paperwork. It takes a long time to put this stuff together. And then you have to propose, well, this is how much I think I can pay. As you might suspect, the IRS thinks you can pay more than you think you can pay. and so I think one of the big problems here is when people get involved in this, whether it's a streamlined or this partial or full pay, is that the IRS doesn't tell you all what the rules are, and they try to use that against you. So, for instance, if I owe the IRS, let's say you owe them $7,200, and I call the IRS, and I can do an installment agreement for the streamlined for $100 a month. But the IRS will put you on the spot and they'll say, well, how much can you pay a month? And you're going to be afraid of the IRS. And you're going to say, I can pay $500 a month. And the IRS says, okay, you're going to pay $500 a month, even though you could have paid $100 a month. And even you probably stretched your budget because you haven't really looked at it. And so you didn't do the investigation. And so you think you could pay $500, but then when it comes time to pay it, you don't have the money to pay $500 a month. And so that makes it very difficult for them. So that's why you can't let yourself put yourself in front of the IRS without thinking about it first, and that's what happens to a lot of people. But the partial pay, again, sometimes what I often tell people when they ask me, can you get the IRS to take less than I owe? And my answer often is, I can't.
Yes, but for one of your children.
That's right. But the answer is, I often can't change what you owe the IRS. But sometimes I can change what you pay the IRS, and that's really what people are concerned about. How much can I pay? And because if I'm only doing a partial installment agreement, it may be that at the end of the day I only pay pennies on the dollar, and I hate to use that term but I pay less than I owe. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. And so, but again, you keep going back and forth with the IRS on a partial installment agreement. But again, there's lots of investigation, a lot of scrutiny. They're going to review exactly where you are. And the last kind is what they call a full pay. And a full pay sounds just what it sounds like, is that you're going to pay everything that you owe them. You're just not going to pay them in installments. And again, there's going to be a full investigation. If you owe more than $50,000, they're going to ask you for all of those documents that I talked about in the partial pay, and they're going to try to get you to pay as much per month as they can. So you might say, well, I can pay them over 72 months, and if your numbers show that you can pay them in 3 years, well, then they're only going to give you 3 years to pay. And so that's why you need help to make sure that you.
That's why somebody should come the minute that you find out that you get your first letter. People should come to a local attorney such as yourself.
Exactly.
And why would that be?
Exactly. Because,
how would they get in touch with you if they wanted to?
Well, if you get a letter from the IRS and they're telling you owe money, first, if they're trying to audit you, get some help before the audit. Don't wait till after the audit. And I think we talked about that a couple of weeks ago about an audit and how this works. But don't wait for the audit to be complete before you start looking for help. But if they tell you owe money, you should call an attorney, and you should call me at 312-664-6649.
There were 6 things. Did we make it through all 6?
Yeah, I mentioned all 6 things. You can visit my website at Chicago Tax Team, because if you get letters, you're going to have a lot of questions. A lot of those questions are going to be answered on the website, on the blog, on the IRS Radio Hour site.
Or if you have a question,
you can send me an email at questions@irsradiohour.com, and I'll answer your question. And if you want a phone call, call me. I'll answer your question on a phone call.
Or you can listen to this show on Sundays at 5 on AM 560.
That's right. We're here every Sunday, and I try to answer all the
answer, because this is the answer.
This is.
So what we've learned is that installments that you don't have to pay right away, but you need help and you need to know what to do. So
Exactly.
Stay right there. We're coming right back.